Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Toby York. I'm one of the senior lecturers in the accounting and finance department. I'm a qualified chartered accountant and I've been teaching accounting for, I think, nearly 20 years. So that'll give you an idea of how ancient I am. I'm also here with Charmaine from our marketing department, and she'll step in and tell me if I'm telling you anything wrong or if I've missed out anything that I should have told you. The format for this afternoon, the title of this afternoon's mini lecture is The Future of Accounting is Now. So I'm going to do a little mini presentation. It'll take maybe half an hour or so, which will give us lots of time for you to ask questions. I'll also talk a little bit about how we're going to deliver teaching in September 22 and probably the same for September 23. So the format of this afternoon is probably around 50 minutes, give or take 10 minutes, certainly no more than an hour. You'll be free before 5 o'clock, promise you. So about half an hour on my little mini lecture. I'll talk a little bit for 10 minutes about teaching and learning at Middlesex in 2022, 2023. And of course, you can ask questions as we go along and also at the end. So if you need to ask a question, you'll see you should have a little icon at the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen, depending on how you've set Zoom up. You should be able to see a little icon that says Q&A. So if you click on Q&A, you can ask your questions there. Please feel free to ask any question that you want. Charmaine will try and answer questions as we're going along if she can. Otherwise, I will pick up questions at the end as well. So let's make a start. Let's talk about the future of accounting being now. And one of the things about accounting is that lots of people don't really start in the right place. What you often find with accounting is that people come with all sorts of ideas and assumptions and experiences of what accounting is. And what we try to do at Middlesex is go right back to the very beginning. We feel that some courses, it's a little bit like this picture shows, we're all standing over here and the course starts somewhere over there. And they've started and off they go and we're forever playing catch up or we get lost along the way. So what we do at Middlesex is we go right back to the very beginning and we assume that nobody knows anything. And that's usually quite a good place to start, even if you think you know a lot. So even if you've done some accounting before, you may have done business A-level or B.Tech or AAT or some kind of accounting, even if you've done some accounting or none, we all start in the same place. Now, what I thought I wouldn't do is I'm not going to start where we start on the course. I'm going to do something slightly different so that if you do come and join us, I'm not going to spoil anything by telling you what we cover in the first lesson. So we don't do what I'm going to do this afternoon, but I'm going to start with a very simple question. What is money? What is money? And money might not be what you think it is. Money is a very strange concept. There are people who write loads of books about money. I've got loads of books here. Money in One Lesson, Money, the Unauthorized Autobiography, What Money Can't Buy. Lots of people write about money. It's a very strange thing, money. We tend to think of it as pounds, pence, coins, notes. Less so now because, you know, coins and notes are sort of going out of fashion, particularly in this country. So we think of it as balances on our account, and that's quite that starts hinting at the nature of money. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to explore this with you in some detail. And the reason this is interesting is because the relationship between money and accounting is much closer and much more tightly welded together than you might imagine. Lots of people think about accounting as, oh, accountants come and keep the score. They come and tell you what's going on in the economy. I think if we start asking ourselves some really probing questions, we'll arrive at some really interesting answers about the nature of the relationship between money and accounting. So I'm going to tell you 3 things that I think are true about money. And you might disagree with me, or you might think, yes, that makes sense. Money is based on nothing but promises. Money is basically a promise. That's all it is. It's an IOU, I will give you. Money is a promise. Therefore, the value of money is only as valuable as the promise that's being made. So if the promise is being made by somebody who keeps their promises, that's a more valuable promise than a promise from somebody you know is a pathological liar. Their promise isn't worth very much. So money, the value of money, comes from the credibility of the person making the promise behind that money. And if we accept that money is nothing but a promise, then there are 2 sides to every promise. There's the giver of the promise, and there's the receiver of the promise. So we're going to come back to those ideas and explore them in a little bit more detail, in a more practical sense. But that's the sort of foundation of the mini lecture that I'm going to give this afternoon. The nature of money is probably not what you think it is when you really start digging deep. And then maybe a little unexpectedly, for a lecture that talks about the future of accounting, I want to start in a place called Uruk, which is in ancient Mesopotamia. So I'm talking about 7,000 or 8,000 years ago, possibly even longer before that. So it's an interesting place, Uruk. Mesopotamia is an interesting place. You can see where it is that we're talking about. We're talking about downtown Iraq. We're in the middle of Iraq. You might be able to see on this map, I'm not sure what your screens are like, but you might be able to see place names from the news in a different context to the one that I'm talking about. Down at the bottom near the Persian Gulf, you can see Basra, which you may have heard of. Uruk is now called Warraq, but Uruk doesn't really exist anymore. Baghdad, you can see. So we're in that part of the world, and it's quite interesting. So this particular part of the world 8,000 years ago was way ahead of everybody else. It was absolutely at the leading edge of civilizations. It's where the first cities really started. And there was a lot of trading, a lot of traveling, people coming through that part of the world. And it's quite interesting. We've known for a long time that there have been these, what we call these clay tokens. These thousands and thousands of these clay tokens have been lying around all over archaeological sites, right the way from Western Turkey, or the very eastern fringes of what today we call Western Europe. So Turkey all the way through almost to the subcontinent of the Indian subcontinent, across that way. Wherever there was an archaeological site, they found these little clay tokens. And what was strange about these clay tokens was that nobody really knew what they were until the 1970s, which I know might sound like ancient history to you, but we're talking about 50 years ago. So these objects are about 8,000, some of them are 10,000 years old, millennia old, but we've really only understood their function and purpose for the last 50 years. And a lot of that is thanks to a French archaeologist called Denise Schmant-Besserat. fascinating woman. And what she discovered was that she said these are actually what she called counting tokens. So it was noticed before that these tokens themselves, they looked like everyday objects. So the objects were like an oil jar, or they were like a sheaf of corn, or they were like a jar of wine, or they were like a sheep or an oxen. So they represented things that were being used in everyday life in that ancient part of the world 8,000 years ago. But beyond that, nobody really knew what they were for. And what Denise Schmardt-Besserat discovered, and this is now well recognized, was that she considered these to be counting tokens, and they were using a system that we call correspondent accounting. So what they would say is, in order to marshal and steward resources, what they would do is they would say, okay, there are 30 sheaves of corn, here are 30 counting tokens. There are 68 sheep, here are 68 counting tokens representing the sheep. So what they all of a sudden had was, they had this idea, this representation through these clay objects that represented something real in the world. Correspondent accounting, or correspondent counting. And this is very significant, because what it enabled these large civilizations to do, these large cities, it enabled them to control what was going on without necessarily being in the right place at the right time. So if livestock was moved, or if jars of oil or whatever were moved, then the counting tokens would be moved. If they were passed from one person to the other, then the counting tokens would be passed from one person to the other. So it was a very neat way of accounting for the movement and exchange of goods within society, represented through clay tokens, these little clay objects. The next thing that happened was something really quite extraordinary. And this is a different lecture, but I'll mention it in passing. Something really very interesting happened, which was that the scribes, the people who were record keeping, realized that they didn't need to keep physical tokens representing those actual objects in the real world. What they could do was they could take a clay tablet and they could press into this soft clay tablet a pictorial representation of the physical clay token. And Denise Schmardt-Besserat's book is actually a book called Before Writing. And this was the very first time, certainly the first time the first existing evidence of time when humans were writing. This is the first time that they're actually inscribing into soft clay something that represents meaning outside, other than just a picture. So what we're saying is there's meaning within these pictures other than the picture itself. These are accounting records. I know it's slightly disappointing to think that the very first thing that humans wrote, apart from pictures, the very first things that they wrote were not poetry or love letters or even elegant long treatises about the way society works. They were just mundane accounting records. The other interesting thing about this is that where this went, this idea of pressing into soft clay to represent the clay tokens that were accounting for things, where this went was, over the centuries, and it took hundreds of years, it wasn't a sort of dawn moment. Over hundreds of years, what the scribes then developed was this system for separating the token itself from the number of tokens. So if you remember what I was saying before, where we had all of these clay tokens, where you had 4 tokens, there were 4 jars of oil. where you had 12 tokens, there were 12 sheep. Now, what the scribes were saying was, look, you don't need 12 tokens. We can have the token and then have a representation for the number. So all of a sudden, they separated out the idea of the number of tokens from the number itself. So what we discovered, invented, discovered, use whichever word you like, we discovered the abstract concept of number, the idea that there's two-ness, the two of something exists separately from the things itself. And this was a very, very significant moment in the development of human numeracy, which later became human literacy. We started writing words and realizing that you could have what we now have is a phonetic alphabet. You can actually make shapes, no longer in soft clay, but on paper or on screens, to represent the sounds that we make when we talk, literacy. The exciting thing from an accounting point of view is that, let's just recap over that sequence of events as to how human achievement, the sequence of events of human achievement. It started with counting, correspondence counting. Counting became accounting, these clay tablets saying how many there were. Accounting became numeracy, numbers, the idea of numbers. Numeracy became literacy. So if we talk about things like the birth of literacy, the birth of numeracy, the birth of mathematics, all of that came from accounting. Accounting came first. Quite extraordinary that all of that came out of accounting. A lot of the standard texts seem to think that numeracy came and then literacy and then accounting. The archaeological evidence and the latest academic thinking, latest last 50 years or so, suggests otherwise. Accounting came before writing, before the idea of numbers. So it's absolutely fundamental to our understanding of the world and how we represent the world in the way that we write. That could be a whole lecture on its own, and I don't want to spend a lot of time doing that. What I thought I would do, though, is maybe do some writing with you. If you can, I mean, I'm not going to check on this, but if you can, find a piece of paper, and what you can do is you can draw these 4 dots on this piece of paper. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw a picture of financial you. So this is actually quite fun. So if you can, grab a piece of paper and then just put 4 dots in each corner or just inside. So what you want to do is you want to have sort of 4 dots like this. Oh, you want 4 dots like you can see there. And then once you've done that, try and do this along with me, because it'll make the time go faster apart from anything, and it's quite fun. You'll have something to show for your time with me this afternoon. And then just draw right in the middle 2 dots slightly closer to each other than the 4 dots that you've already drawn. If you're doing this with me, raise your hand so I can see that I've got people doing it with me. Great, super. Good, good, good. So have you all got, you've got your 6 dots on the page now. So what I want you to do now is I want you to join those 2 dots on the far left of the page. And then I want you to join all those, the 2 dots on the far right of the page. Once you've done that, you can then join the top left dot to the middle dot and the bottom left dot to the middle dot. And then you can close that. So you draw another one down the middle. Do the same the other side. And once you've done that, pop your hand up so I know that you're ready. Great. Good, good, good. Good, we'll move on. Now you've got two rectangles. I'm going to call this the butterfly. So you've got the left wing of a butterfly and you've got the right wing of a butterfly. 2/3 of the way down the right wing of the butterfly, I want you to just draw a horizontal line like that. It doesn't matter if it doesn't have to be exactly 2/3, halfway, just beyond halfway. Give yourself a little bit more room at the top. And then what you've actually drawn is what we call the funding butterfly. This is how we teach accounting at Middlesex. And what we do is we use this methodology called colour accounting. And every person who comes gets given one of these colour accounting packs. So you're given your own pack, you don't have to pay for it, we give it to you, and everybody gets their own set of what we call this colour accounting pack. I'm not going to go through this in detail. You can come to one of the open days or see you when you start, and we'll give you one of those and you'll be up and running. The only reason for mentioning it is that what I'm doing is I'm colouring my left wing green and my right wings are coloured orange. And it's a very simple way of distinguishing what's on the left side and what's on the right side. Particularly when we're in front of the classroom, when we start talking about left or right, then it becomes very confusing. And a lot of accounting is based on left or right. Some of you who've come across accounting before may have heard the terms debit or credit. And that debit or credit really means left or right in some senses. So it can get very confusing. So we get rid of all that confusion. Just say we're talking about the green side, we're talking about the orange side. Now what I want you to do is I want you to put a heading at the top, and this heading is financial you. It's not you, it's a representation of financial you. And then we're going to do something quite fun. I mean, I don't want you to necessarily put numbers into this now, but you could later on think about this and put numbers in it. And you don't necessarily have to do it just for you. You could do it for your parents, your brother, sister, cousin, aunt, uncle, family. What you're going to do is, in that big green box on the left, what we're going to say is that that's where all my valuable things are. Anything that I have of value, and I'm talking here about economic value. I don't want to get drawn too much into detailed accounting, but of course there are lots of valuable things in the world which we don't say have economic value, like kindness or love or integrity or punctuality or reliability. Lots of those things have value. I'm talking about economic value. Jewelry, a house, a car, a savings account, a bank account, your clothes, your other possessions, your phone, all those things that are valuable, have economic value, go into that box. It may be that you also owe people things. You might owe somebody money. They might have lent you money and maybe you owe them money. Or maybe you have a phone which is on a contract, in which case you have an obligation under that telephone, under that mobile phone contract. So that what you owe goes into one of the orange boxes. If you take all of your valuable things and you deduct all of the things that you owe, what you're left with is what your net worth is. That's what we call your net worth. Everything that's of value, less what you owe, is what you're worth. So we're going to put some words onto this. And when we're talking about accounting, Those valuable things we call assets. Those things that you owe are called liabilities. And what you're left with is called equity, if you're a company, or net worth or wealth, if you're an individual. And this raises some really interesting questions about the nature of net worth. What is the nature of somebody's wealth? What's the nature of their net worth? Let's have a look at some examples. This, just by the way, this financial you, this is what accountants call a balance sheet. And the reason it's called a balance sheet is because the two sides are always equivalent in value. Your assets are always equivalent to what you owe and the net worth of everything else after you've deducted what you owe. It's kind of got to be, hasn't it? I mean, if you think about it, if you're saying equity, net worth is assets less liabilities, which is what we say it is, then it must be that assets must equal liabilities plus equity. I mean, the maths is self-serving. It's a closed system. It just works. It's called Uruk, U-R-U-K, Uruk. So let's just think about the nature of net worth or wealth or equity, as I've got it in this slide. Let's say that you do some work. You've got a Saturday job, and at the end of, or maybe you've got a part-time job, and then at the end of the month, your employer pays you £400. Well, if your employer pays you £400, that's £400 that you didn't have before. So now you've got valuable things of £400. I'm not putting all of them on, I'm just putting the change in. So your valuable things have gone up by £400. Now, if your valuable things have gone up by £400 and these two things have to be equal, remember you earned that money. You weren't lent the money, so you don't owe anybody for that £400. So that £400 must have increased your net worth, your wealth. And that sounds right, doesn't it? So cash has gone up by 400 because income has gone up by 400, or the other way around, income has gone up by 400 because your assets, your valuable things have increased without an increase in your liabilities. So therefore your net worth has gone up, your income has gone up in this case, earned income. Again, I'm going to scoot over this really, really quickly. What you'll notice is, in order to keep everything in balance, every transaction has to have two effects. We can't just have cash on its own going up, because then I wouldn't be in balance. Then assets is not equivalent to liabilities plus equity. And this is the idea behind double entry bookkeeping. We're not going to go down that route this afternoon, but that's one of the things that we explore in quite a lot of detail. What I want to do is I want to talk about this idea of worth. So let's just have a look at a guy I'm calling Big Ron. Now, Big Ron, he likes what he says and he says what he likes. He's got it all. He's got a big penthouse suite in Manhattan. He's got a golf course in Scotland. He's involved in politics. Big Ron is a big name. And he's a wealthy guy. Or is he? He has assets of 45 million. So when Big Ron is showing you around his place, he's going, oh, that's my hotel, that's my casino, that's my golf course, that's my resort, this is my apartment. You think, oh, Big Ron really is somebody, isn't he? What we can't see is Big Ron's liabilities. Where are Big Ron's liabilities? If we could see them, maybe we'd see that Big Ron's liabilities were greater than his assets. He's got 50 million of liabilities. He's actually got negative net worth. And this is one of the funny things about wealth. You cannot see wealth. You cannot see negative net worth of -5 million. You can only see the assets. You can't see the liabilities. This is why accounting is really important, because accounting tells the whole story. We're not swayed by saying, oh, Big Ron, look at his assets, look how wealthy he is. Accounting completes the picture and says, okay, but what's Big Ron's underlying wealth? One of the important stories that accounting can tell. Let's have a look by contrast with Quiet Lois. Quiet Lois, okay, she's pretty wealthy. She's got about 300,000, 0.3 million. She lives pretty quietly. She doesn't show off her wealth. She lives in a modest house. She goes on modest holidays. She's got an old secondhand car, but she doesn't have any liabilities. So her equity, her net worth is 0.3 million. Although her assets are considerably less than Big Ron's, she's actually wealthier. Her net worth is greater than Big Ron's in accounting terms. You may have a specific view of, oh, I'd much rather be Big Ron than Quiet Lois, but that's a choice. That's not actually about who's economically, from an accounting point of view, wealthier. So that's quite an interesting way of thinking about wealth that can really only be told using the accounting framework as we're doing here. What I want to do, and I'm conscious of time, I'm going to leave enough time for questions, but what I want to do is I want to go back to this idea of what money is. Because I said at the beginning, money is really just a promise. So let's just think about this. Remember, you went off to do some work, and at the end of the month, your cash, well, actually, it was your current account. Your current account was increased by £400 because your employer transferred £400 from her bank account into your bank account. And that's where your net worth increased, because you'd worked and your cash went up by £400. But let's just have a look at this £400. What are we saying when we say you have £400 of cash? What does that mean? Because actually, the chances are, to know that you've got £400 of cash, you've got to log into your bank account. You've got to look on your phone or on a website to check what balance is in your account. Or you can wait if you get a statement sent to you. But invariably now, we want to know how much have I got? Oh, well, let me go and have a look. I don't pull £400 out of my pocket and say, look, here's my £400. What I'm actually looking at is a balance. What I'm looking at is an accounting balance. And if we think this through carefully, that balance, that cash, okay, you can go and withdraw it from a cash machine, but who's going to pay it to you when you withdraw it out of the cash machine? Who's going to pay you that £400? Remember, your employer has already paid you. The money's left their account. Who's going to pay you the £400? Your bank is. Your bank is going to pay you £400. So look at this, the £400, which is sitting there as an account balance on your account, if you were to look in your bank's account, that would be money that they owe, because they're saying, oh, we owe that £400 to financial you. If you go to the cash machine, you want to be able to withdraw it. And the bank will say, yes, we owe you that money. You can withdraw the cash. Maybe the cash never gets withdrawn. You go to the supermarket and you spend £200 on groceries, then your cash will go down and the bank will say, we owe you less, and they'll settle it in the interbank system. And then another bank will owe that money to the supermarket. What I'm saying is that when we talk about cash, what we're really saying is cash is an IOU. It's a promise. Remember I started, money is a promise. It's a promise from the bank. And it's only as good as the credibility of the person making the promise. That's what I said at the beginning. So that £400, fortunately for you, we don't have to just rely on Big Bank. Sitting behind Big Bank is the Bank of England. And the Bank of England, through its regulatory measures and its liquidity measures, will make sure that Big Bank can always pay you your £400. And sitting behind the Bank of England is the government. So not only have you got the bank and whatever their balance sheet, the strength of their balance sheet, behind that you've got the Bank of England, behind that you've got the UK government. So it's about as good and rock solid a promise as you can ever expect from somebody. In fact, it's such a good promise that almost anybody will accept it from you. So when we're exchanging money, when we're saying, oh, here's £20, what you're actually saying is, I've got this promise from the Bank of England, supported by the UK government through my bank, that will pay me cash of £20. Do you want this promise? And that's what we're doing when we're exchanging cash. We're exchanging these promises that are supported by these large institutions. And those of you who are coming in to study banking and finance will look at this in much more detail. The lesson that I want you to understand this afternoon is that when we say cash, we actually mean an accounting balance, where a bank just says, oh, I owe you. Now you might think, and this is, I'm going to finish quite quickly, I'm going to be about another 7 minutes. You might think that somewhere along the line there must be real cash. Well, yes and no. Yes and no. Let's take a different example. Let's say that you borrow £1,000 from the bank. Let's say you borrow £1,000 from the bank. Let's think about what happens when you borrow money from the bank. If you borrow money from a bank, the bank will send you a loan agreement, and you'll sign that loan agreement saying, I promise to pay you back. Once you've signed the loan agreement saying, I promise to pay you back, the bank will transfer £1,000 into your current account and say, there you go, there's the money that you've borrowed. So if we look at financial you, your current account goes up by 1,000, but you owe the bank 1,000. So your net wealth hasn't really changed. You know, borrowing money doesn't increase your wealth, but it does increase your bank account. It does increase your cash. I've got more in my bank account, but I've also owe more to the bank. Let's have a look at Big Bank. Let's have a look at their butterfly. Everybody has their own funding butterfly. Because you owe the bank £1,000, Big Bank has got something valuable. Remember, this is promises. We're coming back to promises. Where you owe the bank £1,000, Big Bank is owed £1,000 by you. They have a receivable, the promise from you. It has economic value. They are expecting £1,000 back from you at some point in the future, assuming you're going to keep to the deal. So your liability is the bank's asset. Your liability, your obligation to pay them is what's valuable to them as an asset. We're going to get that money back from you. But this is where things get very peculiar. Because what about this £1,000 in the current account? Where that £1,000 in your current account, who owes you that £1,000 in your current account? Well, the bank owes you. The bank owes you £1,000 in your current account. That £1,000, you can go to the cash machine and withdraw it, or you can spend it, or you can buy a car with it. You can do whatever you want. Who's going to give you the money? The bank is. So let's just have a look at how Big Bank PLC has created money. You went to the bank and said, oh, can I borrow £1,000? Big Bank made an accounting entry. They said, you owe us £1,000, we owe you £1,000. Bingo, there's £1,000. Isn't that strange? There's no cash. I mean, there are regulations that mean the bank has to keep some capital to support that borrowing, that lending. But the money is simply just created by the bank by saying, you owe us £1,000, we owe you £1,000. New money. Accounting created the money. Accounting doesn't measure the money, accounting is the money. That's what's quite exciting about studying accounting. And I did promise, I'm going to finish and I will come to your questions. I did promise you, what about the future of accounting? What's going to happen in the future? Well, look where we've been and where we're going. Look where we've been. We started with clay tokens. We've turned that into coins. We've turned that into bits and bytes on our phones. People think that actually Bitcoin or Ethereum is going to be the future of currencies. I haven't talked about the difference between private currency, fiat currency, but that's a whole area in banking and finance that you could explore. What's the future going to hold? Well, the answer is we don't know. But what we do know is that there are going to be accounting balances. There are going to be promises made between people which require accounting. So the actual mechanics of accounting, which we hinted at, didn't explore, the mechanics of accounting haven't really changed very much for 800, 900 years. The actual mechanics of accounting, double entry bookkeeping is what we call it, haven't really changed very much for 800, 900 years. Very unlikely to change. There's a lot of talk about blockchain, AI, data analytics, when the robots take over. Accounting is very unlikely to change. So there aren't many subjects where you can come and study it and the person who's teaching you can say with some degree of confidence, what we're teaching you is not going to become obsolete in your lifetime. Study chemistry, physics, you know, those things come and go. But accounting, this is the way we do it. It's likely to remain unchanged for the foreseeable future. Well beyond our foreseeable future, in my view. And it's for that reason that the future of accounting is now. So that's a little taste of a lecture. Usually our teaching is more interactive. We don't, because we're in this webinar mode, we don't have a lot of opportunity to get you too involved. But in our online teaching, when you join the university, we're all in the classroom together when we're online and of course on campus. So it would be much more interactive. I'm happy to answer specific questions about how we teach. We take a very direct and active approach to our teaching. We try to make our teaching dynamic and relevant and interesting. We try to be creative. We try to get you involved. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you might have. And I've also talked to you a little bit about the materials. We try really hard to bring the subject to life through the use of interactive and dynamic materials. So, how are we doing? We're doing pretty well, I think. I will, while I'm answering your questions, I'm just going to leave those highlights up about what our teaching approach is going to be for 2022 and 2023. Somebody has asked, is it worth getting an accounting degree when taking on an apprenticeship in accountancy? Well, let me answer that question slightly differently. Because, not because I don't want to answer your question, but because there are really two routes into accounting. You can leave school and join an accounting firm under an apprenticeship. and they will train you as an accountant, and then you can go and become a qualified accountant going that route, going through the apprenticeship route. The alternative is you can come and get a degree, relevant or non-relevant. So you could go and study geography, or you could do a relevant degree like accounting, finance. So you could go to university and get a degree and then go and get a training contract, either as a relevant graduate or a non-relevant graduate. That just means, was your subject pertinent to accounting or not? So those are the two routes, apprenticeship or graduate. You might want to explore apprenticeship because it means that you might qualify slightly quicker, but it means that you don't enjoy the university experience and all that has to offer. So that's just a personal choice. University offers very much more than professional training. You're invited into a very collaborative, collegiate environment. You'll meet the best friends of your life there. We cover lots of things that aren't covered in professional training, like critical thinking skills, research analysis, all sorts of things that aren't covered in a much more sort of functional training environment. How are we doing? Oh, Anjali, I missed your question. Which one's better, business management or accounting? Accounting. But if you go and ask business management, they'll say business management. It really depends on what it is that you want to do. Business management is much more generalist. So you'll cover things like organizations, marketing, HR, business development, life cycles in businesses, environmental sustainability in business. You know, there's a huge area to look at, which means that you're very generalist. Accounting is quite specific, and we do cover some of those things. But really, our accounting and finance programs are geared towards those people who really think that they're going to be working on the financial side of business. So I wouldn't like to say which one is better. If you're thinking of going through the accounting route or the financial route or the banking and finance route, then yes, I would suggest do accounting. If you're just interested in general business, then consider business management. Have I taught at other universities? No, I haven't. I'm Middlesex through and through. What did you do prior to being a lecturer? I qualified as an accountant, and then I worked in industry. So I became a finance director of a chain of menswear companies, funnily enough. So my commercial experience is in menswear. I think I've answered that. I think I've answered that. If I haven't answered it, then ask me again. Done. Done that. What are the accounting exams like? Depends how much you like accounting. I love accounting, so the exams are great. If you hate accounting, then the exams will be miserable. Would you like to expand on your question? I mean, do you mean the university's exams or professional exams? The other thing is, of course, for assessment, let me turn this off. For assessment, we do a lot of varied forms of assessment. So it's not all exam. There's coursework, there's continuous assessment, there's research assignments, there's group assignments, there's online assignments, there's a dissertation, there's practical work working with accounting software. You can go on placement and get credit for going on placement. So there's all sorts of different assessment methods. Do you think that the degree gives you an edge more than an apprenticeship in your career? I would say probably yes. But the further away you get from your degree and the further away you get from your formal education, school, then the less important it becomes. But yes, I would think a degree probably gives you an edge over an apprenticeship. But that's not the only consideration. For some people, actually, 3 years of not working is a lot of salary to give up. 3 years of student loans being taken on is something to consider. So it's not just about getting an edge, there are other considerations. Is Middlesex a good university for accounting and finance? It's brilliant. I mean, what am I going to say? Of course, I think it's a good university. I wouldn't work here if I didn't think it was a good university. What I would suggest is make your own mind up. Go and have a look at other universities. See the way that they teach accounting, see the way that they welcome you, talk to you, the language that they use. Go to the campuses, go and kick the tires, as they say. Go and find out whether or not it's your kind of place. You've really got to sort of trust your instincts on this and say, oh yes, I like that I got a good feeling from it. So yeah, I do think it's good. Do you get internships? Yes, you get an internship. You get an internship, you get a placement. You can have a year off between years 2 and 3, and you can spend a year working and then come back year 3. So yes, loads of opportunities for internships. The steps to being a finance director are get qualified as a qualified professional accountant. So not just an accounting and finance degree, but post-degree, you then go and qualify as a professional accountant, ACCA, ACA, ICAW, one of the institutes, SEMA. Then you work hard and put your way in the way of opportunity. I'm not sure how you get to be a finance director. Hard work and a lot of good fortune and good luck are required. But the hard work and the qualification, they're prerequisites. It's not going to happen. It doesn't mean that because those happen, you'll end up a finance director. They're certainly not going to happen if you don't. Did you always want to be an accountant? No, I never wanted to be an accountant. I can't remember any time in my childhood thinking, yes, what I really want to do is be an accountant. But having said that, I have absolutely no regrets. It's given me a great career, loads of variety. As I said, I've been teaching for 20 years. I think it's a really worthwhile profession. It's been fabulous. Thank you for the question. The university exams. Well, the university exams. Again, it depends. How do you feel about exams? The one thing that's different about all universities, this isn't just Middlesex, the one thing that's different about all universities compared to, say, schools, for example, is that the whole assessment ecosystem is in-house. So for my module, when I'm teaching you, I'm writing the exam. You're going to sit the exam that I wrote. I'm going to mark the exam that I wrote that you sat. So there are external influences on that. We're moderated, we're reviewed, but your lecturers are going to make sure that you are well prepared for your exam. They know you are going to be well prepared. So if you do the work, the exams are a breeze. It's not really a problem. We know exactly how to prepare you. So you should be fine. This university, Rujal, runs 2 semesters. So most universities will have what are called learning weeks. So there are 24 learning weeks in a year. When you can do the maths, can't you? Which means there are 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 learning weeks that are not. So 24 learning weeks in the year. We run 2 semesters, September to Christmas, which is 12 weeks, and then January through to Easter, which is another 12 weeks. And then the summer term is spent on revision, exams, and resits. So 2 semesters. Do you think A-level economics is helpful towards an accounting degree? Yes, it will be helpful, although we don't assume any knowledge from any of our students. So we'll start from ground zero and we will take you to the promised land of accounting and finance degree. So please don't worry that there are going to be basic requirements. You have to meet the entry requirements of the university. So you have to make sure you meet those entry requirements, which I'm sure is the equivalent, I don't know what the grades are now, forgive me, but the equivalents of grade B for GCSE, maths and English, and the A levels. Yes, we do help our students get internships. We have a department that is working on internships and placements all the time. We're constantly telling our students about internship and placement opportunities. We don't get the internship. We help our students get the internship. So we will give you all of the help and support that you need, provide you with loads of opportunities to apply for internships. You have to do the applications, you have to go to interview, you have to get the offer. We can't do that bit for you. We're not offering degree apprenticeships with the likes of PwC at the moment. No, we're not. No, it's something we've looked at, but we've shied away from it. We don't want to do that at the moment. We want to make a very clear distinction between a degree and an apprenticeship. They're both valid approaches. They're going to suit, those two different approaches are going to suit different people for different reasons, but we're running a university degree program, not an apprenticeship. This course will not make you a certified accountant. This will make you a graduate in accounting and finance. As a graduate in accounting and finance or otherwise, you are able then to apply for a training contract, and the training contract with a firm will take you through to being a chartered accountant. Did I miss a question? I hope I didn't miss a question. Did I miss a question? No, I didn't. Part-time job, I think sometimes a part-time job can be helpful. Yes, I think that, it's always a balance. When we say, when you come to university, you're here for full-time study, we are expecting at least 30 to 40 hours of study a week. One of the differences with school, again, is at least 2/3 of that is on your own, independent study, not what we would call contact time. So only 1/3 of your time, sometimes less, 1/3 of your contact hours, 1/3 of your study time is with tutors or in groups or in a lecture. The rest of the time you're on your own. There is scope to have a part-time job. It can very often be helpful and inform your studies. It's a question of getting the balance right. You don't want to be doing too much work so your studies suffer. No, they don't. So what some universities do is, and we're the same, what some universities do is, including ours, is if you choose the right module, if you choose the right program and you choose the right module, you will get certain exemptions from your professional exams. That's not the same thing as becoming a certified accountant. If you choose the right modules and you score the requisite number of marks in those modules, when I say module, I mean subject. If you do that, and then you apply to one of the institutes later on, they'll say, okay, you don't have to sit that exam, but that's all. And that's the same with all of the other universities. There's no university, unless they're doing it as a part of an apprenticeship program, there's no university where you can become a certified accountant or a chartered certified accountant at the same time. You can get exemptions for certain exams, that's all. They're just different institutes. So the difference between a chartered accountant and ACCA, there are just competing institutes. So institutes are organizations that award you the title of chartered accountant. And one of them is the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, ICAEW, in which case, if you qualify with them, you'll be ACA. Another one is the Association of Certified Chartered Accountants, ACCA. And if you qualify with them, then you'll be an ACCA. They're very similar, but they're just different companies doing the same thing. Yes, if you join an apprenticeship program as a trainee chartered accountant, then yes, you'll end up as a chartered accountant as long as you pass all of your exams. Yes. It does reduce the number of steps you have to take. Yeah, it does. Yeah. But it's a different experience. It's just a different route. Great, good. Thank you for coming. Yeah, please feel free to leave whenever you are ready. We've run over a couple of minutes. we had lots of really good questions. So many thanks for all of those. I'm happy to hang around if anybody's got any more questions. No problem. No problem. Nice to see you all. How many years? Well, again, it depends if you're relevant or non-relevant, but the degree is 3 years, 4 years if you take a placement, and then if you sign your contract, it's going to be at least 3 years. If you go through an apprenticeship route, it's going to be 4 to 5 years from school, leaving school. So it's longer through university, but different. Oh, bless you, Albert. Thank you. No problem. Bye.
Thank you, Toby.
Pleasure.
Bye.
See you. Are you okay, Lee? Did you want to ask anything else? Can we close the meeting down then? Great. Okay. Bye.